On today's video, we are talking hill repeats, my nemesis, and you've probably seen them on your training programs scheduled, but we're going to be talking about exactly what is a hill repeat, how to do them, what sort of gradient you should be doing your hill repeats on, how often you should be doing them in a session, and also what are some of the benefits and why do we actually do them. That's all coming up on today's video. My name is Brad. I'm from CoachParry.com, where we help you become fitter, faster, and stronger, and we've got the coach with us today, Lindsay Parry, who's going to dig deep into hill repeats. Welcome back to The Coach. Today we're talking about hill repeats and hill training. Lindsay, for brand new runners, what is a hill repeat? What is hill training when it comes to running?
Yeah, very good question, Brad, because I'm often asked that question in the forums, and obviously for me, because I've been running literally my entire life, if I say the word hill repeat, it's just so obvious what it is. And one of our common questions in the forum is, okay, I've got to do a hill session, and you think that the instructions you've given are self-explanatory, but that's because you're coming at it from an experience of knowing exactly what a hill repeat is. So really, really good question. And a hill repeat is essentially a repetition where you've chosen a segment of a hill, whether it be related to time or distance. You have a segment of hill where you work hard or run firm up, and when you get to the top you turn around and you run really easy down and recover, and then you turn around, you run hard up, and you jog easy down and recover. And that is a process that you repeat for the number of repetitions that have been prescribed for that particular workout.
What is the purpose of hill repeats? Why do you put them in your training programs?
So, by true definition, hills are there to build strength. But for me, hill work is essentially secret speed work, because part of what allows us to run really fast or to run faster is strength. There is a neuromuscular component, and that's why actual proper speed work is necessary, particularly as we really are starting to run faster. But over the years, I can't even tell you how many runners have done speed work, come out of a speed work block, and then have expressed their surprise at their improvement in speed when we start doing track workout. So for me, doing hill work, besides preparing you for a tough hilly route, which is what a lot of people use hill work for, I always use hill work as a preamble and preparation for speed work. If you get stronger, you've done the groundwork on the hills, you have a reduced risk of getting injured when you do dive into the speed work.
Let's talk about the hill itself. Not all hills are created equal. Do you need to find the steepest hill you can find, or is there a gradient that is more suited to hill repeats than others?
So typically I move through two phases when I'm doing hill work. We'll do a 3 to 6 week block of slightly longer, more gradual hill. So that's a hill that's between 3 and 5% is typically your ideal gradient there. It is steep enough that it really forces you to work, but it's gradual enough that you can still get a reasonable turnover and build up a reasonable speed. And so the one thing that I left out just now as part of my answer is what is hill work about, and it's also linked to why I choose those gradients, is that when you run on a slight incline, not like a really steep or like too hard incline, but when you run on a decent incline of between 3 and 5%, your running form is also greatly improved, because we naturally lean slightly into the hill, and our knee drive and push off really improves, and so that is another reason why I really like to incorporate hill work, particularly in the early preparation phase of any program, because it really does it improves strength, it improves speed, it improves running form. But yeah, so 3 to 5% in the early stages, and then we'll move into a power phase where 5% or closer to 5, or maybe just over 5, but we don't really want to be at 6 and 7. So a little 5 and a little bit over. We'll do shorter hill sprints where we really want to develop that power, but because they are shorter, you're able to sustain that intensity even though the hill is just that little bit steeper. And then from there we'll move into, depending on the exact event we're training for, but we'll typically move into slightly longer intervals and then into shorter intervals as we get into the race.
Lindsay, let's talk about the gradient. And people struggle with this. It took me a while to figure out because maths is definitely not one of my core competencies. But in order to calculate the gradient, when you talk about a 3% or a 5%, it's basically how much you're climbing per 100 meters, or 100 feet. So it doesn't matter what unit of measurement you're using, but let's say, for instance, it's meters. So for every 100 meters you're traveling forward, you're climbing 3 meters in elevation. That would be a 3% gradient. If it was a 5% gradient, for every 100 meters that you are moving forward, you're climbing 5% in 5 meters in elevation. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, it's exactly it's rise over run. So vertical elevation over meters traveled. That's what you do. You convert them both into meters. So if you have run a segment which is 400 meters and your vertical elevation gain was 40 meters, and you ran 400 meters, you would divide 40 by 400, and you'd multiply that by 100, and it will give you a percentage.
And most sports watchers will be able to give you those numbers in order for you to do those calculations anyway. And then, Lindsay, let's talk about the length of these hill repeats and sort of how you should approach them. Do you need to smash them as hard as you can from the get-go, or do you want it to be sort of controlled that the first one is at the same pace as the last one in that set?
Yeah, so the length of them really depends on what people are training for. But as a rule of thumb for the average or normal runner, I generally don't go longer than 2 minutes on the long repeats, and between 45 seconds and 1 minute on the short hill sprints, if you like. And look, the idea of them is to run hard, but as with any interval that is prescribed, if you do them at the right intensity, you should be able to do the first few at whatever speed it is. Let's just hypothetically 5 minutes per K is really pushing, and you run 5 minutes per K for the first one. You're still running 5 minutes per K through the middle, and by the end, although it's now starting to get extremely tough to run 5 minutes per K, you can actually do it. So that's the idea, is to be consistent across the number of repetitions and to be really tired at the end but not completely out on your feet. Then you've got the intensity just about right. And on the hill repeats, I find that typically that is about 10 to 15 seconds slower than your best 5K pace. So if you run at 5K effort and you're running up a hill, you will be around about 15 seconds slower than your best 5K effort. So that normally gives you a pretty good idea of getting you into the ballpark, and the rest is then adjusting on a weekly basis depending on how well that you executed the set.
Talking a set, how many repeats should you be doing in a set? Does that depend on where you are in your training?
Yeah, it depends on where you are in your training and your ability as a runner and what your target is. So again, depending on who I'm working with, we would start with typically between 4 and 6, and we would build that up to between 6 and 12 on the longer ones, and on the 1 minute or 45 second ones, we would typically build up. Again, we wouldn't start lower because we almost always go from doing the longer ones to the shorter ones. So we typically then stay at a number, and depending on your ability, that would be anywhere between 8 times 1 minute flat out, all the way up to about 15 and even 20 in some cases with elite athletes.
And Lindsay, how would you structure a hill repeat workout? Do you need to warm up before it? Do you need to cool down? How would you generally structure those workouts?
We always warm up. So for me, warming up would mean as a minimum requirement, running between 10 and 15 minutes really easy. Again, if you've got time, you would want to do an even better warm-up than that. You'd want to do 15 to 20 minutes, perhaps a few activation drills or a couple of short building run-throughs of 80 meters just to really get the neuromuscular coordination going, to get the heart rate up, to get the blood pumping to the muscles, and then you'd go into your workout. And certainly afterwards, you would run. The aim is to run between 30 and 45 seconds slower than you would typically run on an easy run. So afterwards, you really want to do at least 10 minutes, possibly 15 minutes, where you just run super, super, super easy and just bring all that physiology back down.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget, if you don't want to miss out on any of our videos, make sure you click the subscribe button over here. You can watch our latest video over here, and be sure to check out one of our most popular videos over here. And then also, if you want to catch up and grab one of our free strength training programs, all you need to do is click over here.